This song I'm playing for you, I wrote while I was sitting in Haiti on the top of a rooftop of an orphanage on a missionary. So I'm playing this in thinking about the 17 missionaries that are held kidnapped in Haiti right now. So this is to them. Pave paradise, put up a parking lot. And a big hotel and a boutique with a single spot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? Pave paradise, put up a parking lot. Took away the trees, put them in a tree museum. And they charge all the people an arm and a leg just to see them. Don't it all seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? Pave paradise, put up a parking lot. Ooh, ba, 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 ba. Ooh, ba, ba, ba. Hey, ba, ba, put away the DDT. Give me spots on my apples and leaves and the birds and the bees. Don't it all seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? Pave paradise, put up a parking lot. Late last night, heard that screen door slam. And a big heavy taxi took me away, my old man. Don't it all seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? Hey, paradise, put up the parking lot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? Hey, paradise, put up the parking lot. Hey, paradise, put up the parking lot.
We have forgotten who we are. We have become estranged from the movements of the earth. We have forgotten who we are. We have sought only our own security. We've exploited simply for our own ends. We've distorted our knowledge, abused our power. We have forgotten who we are. Now the land is barren, and the waters are poisoned, and the air is polluted, and the forests are dying, and the creatures are disappearing. We have forgotten who we are. But there is still time to join with the earth and with each other, time to bring new life to the land, to restore the waters, refresh the air, renew the forest, care for new plants, protect the creatures. Time to celebrate the seas, to rejoice in the sunlight, to sing the song of the stars. Still time to create the human community that will promote justice and peace. Still time to remember our children and those who will come after us. This morning, here and now, let us remember who we are. Let us remember whose we are. Come, let's worship together. I invite Sam Clifford to come forward and light our chalice, and Sam will light the chalice, and then Sam will say the words that are not bolded, and your part are the bolded words. So get ready. Sam, you look like a pro. Who'd know this was your first time?
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting a path to faith and hope.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling us to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace upon all the world. Well, good morning, whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey. For this 1 hour, you're part of this congregation and you are welcome. If there's anyone new who's joining us for the first time, this is not required, but if you'd like to rise and introduce yourself, we will give you one of our fabulous, warm First Parish welcomes from behind our masks. Anybody who's joining us for the first time who wants to say hello, just rise if you'd like our warm First Parish welcome. All right, Rosalind, welcome. Nice to have you with us. Anyone else? Yes. Super. Welcome, Kim. I remind everybody that we gather for our coffee hour outside on the front lawn, and there's some exciting things happening. Cindy, did you want to make a little announcement about what's happening with the plastics challenge, or is there enough in the order of service? Your choice. There's enough, so just, you do want to make an announcement? At the very end, got it, okay. So we have a very exciting coffee hour today, a plastics challenge, and you'll hear that woven all through the service. It is International Climate Action Day. Did I miss a word? Okay, super. And we are a hybrid service. Lots of our folks are on the remote, and we have an announcement from Jim Hamilton about something that's happening for our remote people after church. So take it away, Jim.
Thank you, Catherine. So for everybody on Zoom, you've been hearing about the 5 questions exercise as part of the Envisioning the Meeting House in the 21st Century. So after church today on Zoom, we will be doing one of those 5 question sessions that I will lead, and you'll get your chance to provide some feedback on thoughts about the sanctuary. You've probably seen the 5 questions in your e-distro. I'll make sure that you see them through Zoom, through the chat, so keep an eye on the chat, but we'll be doing that right after Zoom in place of coffee hour. So if you'd like, please stay, and I think you'll find it very interesting.
Super, thanks, Jim. Dustin, if you would put our remote friends on gallery view. And there's one more thing I'd like to do during the welcome here. I'm going to ask someone very special among our church leaders and very special to me to come forward. Michael Gardner, would you come forward, please? This is the time when we get to surprise Michael. Michael, I think back to the search committee that called me to First Parish 18 years ago, and Michael was on the search committee. One of the few remaining members. We've lost a lot of our members on that search committee over the years, and Michael's been such an incredible lay leader in my ministry, worship, head of the pastoral care team, just a million different things. And Michael is celebrating a very special birthday today. So did you have anybody wonder what's underneath this very beautiful piece of cloth here on the altar table? If you can move these candles back, your wife Sherry brought those here. Those are from Sherry. And ta-da! There is a cake under here. And let's see if we can open it up, because we're gonna sing, we're gonna make him blow out the candle. I can tell your age, right? Michael is 75 years old today. That's a pretty important accomplishment. So let's see if we can take this off. This cake without damaging this thing too much. I should practice this ahead of time. Sherry tells me it's like an amazing cake. It's from Veronica's Sweet Cakes. Where Michael's granddaughter worked. So get your voices all oiled up. We do have to keep our masks on, but we're going to sing happy birthday to Michael in just a moment, as soon as we take the box off the cake. Just kind of lift it off, because we want to keep it in there. This cake, by the way, will be the refreshments at coffee hour. Oh man, it's beautiful. You guys will get to see it at coffee hour, but the Zoom people can see it. It says Happy 75th, Michael. So, in true birthday fashion, I have a candle, which you have to blow out. And when you blow it out, we will all sing. And Zoom people, feel free to sing. We know that it's not, it's all kind of cacophonous there, but that's okay. Sing out. Unmute yourselves. Go ahead and unmute yourselves, and let's sing Happy Birthday to Michael. Unmute yourselves if you can. And Michael will blow out the candle and we will sing happy birthday to him. All right. Happy birthday
to
to
you. Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday
to
to
you.
you.
Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday,
dear Michael.
Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday
to
to
I
you.
love
you
this.
Cha
and
cha cha.
many
Thank you all.
more.
Happy birthday, Michael. And thanks to Sherry for providing this amazing surprise. I now invite Tony Pilla to come forward for his testimonial for the Envision the Sanctuary program. I also want, while Tony's coming forward, I want to remind you all, I hope you got the notice yesterday. Our special meeting in the parish will be Tuesday night on Zoom to take a vote to officially hand over the parsonage to an Afghan refugee family for an 18-month period. I hope you all saw that. We will be pounding you with further notices. You'll get something tomorrow, and you'll get a reminder on Tuesday. It starts at 7 o'clock. The meeting should not last long.
You didn't notice
If
what
you
I
have any
did.
questions about this
Grandson.
Duxbury Afghan initiative, be sure and just or Cindy Fiorini will answer all your questions. We are really, really excited about this amazing opportunity. Sometimes things just fall into place. As many of you know, I'm moving out of the parsonage because I bought a home, and we had a housing space, and then the Taliban situation arose, and we've been accepted by Catholic Charities and the Combined Jewish Philanthropies, I think it is, as a host site for an Afghan refugee family. We are so, so excited about this initiative, but we need your congregational vote. We need 50 people to show up on Zoom on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. It won't take long, and vote that yes, we're all in favor of allowing this family to live in the parsonage. There's an entire town-wide initiative that is going to provide everything else for the family. The only thing First Parish is committing to is the housing for a period of up through June of 2023. So really, really excited about this. Please, please, please show up on Tuesday at 7 o'clock on Zoom, or we'll be calling you. We'll find you. And don't forget, you can call in on Zoom. You don't have to do even if no matter where you are in the universe, call or just join in the meeting. All right, Tony, take it away.
Good morning. The last time I was here, I had more hair, and it was brown. And it's truly awesome speaking from this position in this sanctuary. It's quite remarkable. I haven't been here in a while, not because we haven't wanted to, but life gets in the way, and there are always distractions, so I feel I should introduce myself. My name is Tony Peeler, and my wife and I have been connected to this church since 1973. We've been involved with the buildings of this church for many years. Dorothy was a member of committees in renovating the Assembly Hall and currently the Ruby Graves parlor. And I was a project manager of the window restoration of the sanctuary and the exterior painting of the church. So you can see why we are concerned about any discussion of changes to the physical and structural nature of this church. It's a very special place. Today, however, I'm speaking for myself as a member of the Historical Committee regarding the appearance of the sanctuary. And if you're wondering about where my ideas are coming from, I should also confess to being a retired teacher, an artist, art history wonk, and one of the worst members of the Historical Committee. I think I was asked to speak today as a form of atonement for all the meetings that I've missed. And since I recognize that I'm losing words at this stage of my life, I figured I'd better speak up now and be done with it. So I would appreciate your patience. This sanctuary has special meaning to Dorothy and I because it is where we first embraced this church as our spiritual home. On Christmas Eve in 1973, the year we moved to Duxbury, we came to what we expected to be a Christmas Eve service, as we had at the Bedford Unitarian Universalist Church before our recent move. We arrived at a darkened rear parking lot, only to discover that there was no one here. Had we made a mistake? Kind of typical of us. Perhaps, except that there was a flicker in the light of that window. But where were all of the parishioners? Did we miss the appointed time? Disappointed, we sadly went home, determined to return another day. And what we eventually discovered was that there were people in this church, in this sanctuary. It was the new minister and his wife who were waiting for church members to attend. It seems the previous minister had determined that a Christmas Eve service was too Christian and not appropriate, and therefore not a need for a Christmas service. Pete Peterson, who was the minister, thought otherwise, and our present Christmas Eve service continues to be one of the most attended services of the church year. By the way, Pete always used to announce the time of the Easter service to most of the people sitting in the pews of this church. So there's something about the spirit of community and tradition that outweighs theological dogma, and that is what I believe Pete Peterson understood and tried to restore. For us personally, the message was that, from a flicker of light, we were able to find our way out of the darkness. This sanctuary means many things to a diversity of parishioners, and as UUs, we proudly embrace our diversity as a faith-based community. In light of that, I would argue that this sanctuary, in its simplicity, allows for that diversity of worship and belief to exist. This is an awesome space, which is a testament to the spiritual ambitions of a denomination which was an integral part of this community in the past, continues to be. It is therefore of historical importance, and as a first parish, like so many others in New England, it was of religious importance as well. In view of those associations, I've always wondered about the motivation of those builders in the construction of this magnificent structure, both conceptually and aesthetically. Frank Lloyd Wright, by the way, would have been proud of this building. There is this open space which structurally has been sound for all of these generations, took a great deal of both initiative, but also hindsight and knowledge about building practices. An uncluttered space like this is just something to behold and something to truly appreciate. It's a rather humble design. It's barely adorned with religious accessory or decoration. That's all part of the Protestant Reformation, which is kind of always interesting to me, being raised as a Roman Catholic. Coming into a church like this, I always wondered, where's all the color? Where are all the icons? What happened? Something, they must have cut the budget. But in its simple aesthetic, I believe that one can find its spiritual significance as well. That there is something greater than ourselves, something that can be rather transcendent by being immersed and participating in a service, a religious service, in a space such as this. The 19th century transcendentalists always thought that spirituality could be found by immersing oneself in nature. Isn't that interesting that these windows, these magnificent windows, allow us to bring nature into this building every Sunday? And I think that that's part of the immersion of the experience and the transcendency of that experience. And you know, if you look at each of the lights in these windows, they're imperfect, like us. And in their imperfection, there are distortions which allow us to see sometimes multi-levels of the same object and different viewpoints. And to me, those simple things are quite meaningful. So rather than being a space that is cold and unwelcoming, this is a space that, for me at least, possesses universal qualities that certainly speak to our past, but qualities that I believe are also contemporary and well-suited for the future. What are those qualities? I see an aesthetic in this special place which is defined by, and these are art historical terms, but they are terms that kind of resonate with me as I try to define and find clarity and stuff. It's a special place which is defined by a noble simplicity, a quiet grandeur, a changeless generality, a place where we can experience a certain clarity of thought and feeling, a place where less is more. These are classical ideas, but they are also ideas that have a sound presence in our humanist forebears. They are represented in a humble, nuanced, and subtle manner throughout this building, and they define an uncluttered space that allows for reflection, a space where we can wrestle with our existential being, a space to actualize our spirituality. The pulpit, the draperies, tablets, and geometric forms serve as an aesthetic focal point, as they should. They are elevated for emphasis, as they should, and exist as symbolic as well as aesthetic visual reminders of who we were. They are part of the history of this church, and they have a museum-like significance, but they also honor our connection to the past. Those forms are an integral part of the whole interior experience. Any changes must consider the aesthetic balance that will be affected. The challenge will be how to introduce our present spiritual values, the 7 Unitarian Universalist principles, in a manner that respects past and present. When that decision is made, the result will be a reminder of how we have evolved, how we have progressed, how truly modern and relevant our spiritual message is, and how our spiritual journey is part of a religious continuum. Thank you.
Dustin, I think we'll, yeah, super. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I think we will go right to our reflections. So I invite Jean Penven and Mike Wilson to come forward.
Good morning. My name is Jean Penben. I'm also a worship associate, and I followed Tony and Dorothy here, but a decade later. Thank you, Tony, for your wonderful reflection on this glorious sanctuary. I was asked to speak because today is International Climate Action Day, and I'm going to address briefly the global impact of climate change, just a little topic for us. The African continent is the world's most tropical continent. The equator runs right through the center, and only the northern and southernmost bits of that continent fall outside of the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Africa is also the world's youngest continent. Almost 60% of the population is under the age of 25. And in most countries, up to 48% of the population is under the age of 15. They are younger than 10th graders. Geography and demography are not destiny, but those two factors clearly put the continent in the threatening crosshairs of climate change and its inevitable impact on future generations. Women, who comprise the majority of the continent's farmers and the greatest proportion of the populations living in absolute poverty, will bear the brunt of climate crises now and going forward as they struggle mightily to feed their families. Drought and flooding are not at all new to the peoples of the continent. Africans developed socially appropriate strategies to cope with and survive their climate cycles throughout time, but now the intensity and repetition of those cycles is greatly enhanced. Mozambique is in Southeast Africa. It is where I have invested my life's work. I spend a lot of time there, and if you appreciate the bouquet on one of the tables when you go outside for coffee hour, a Mozambican colleague of mine who spent the weekend with me gave that to me as a gift, and I wanted to bring it to you as to bring this population into our midst. With today's better road infrastructure, relief for drought-stricken areas has greatly diminished the death tolls. At least at the turn of the 21st century, the country was hit with flooding that was described as catastrophic. That word, catastrophic, is now chillingly familiar to us. We hear it a lot. At that time, the floods of 2000 broke the weather records that have been carefully kept in this region for over 120 years, smashed all the weather records in the year 2000. And 4 years later, floods hit once again and were even worse. What we call hurricanes in the Atlantic are called cyclones in the Indian Ocean. In early 2019, cyclones Idea and Kenneth hit Mozambique and its hinterland. Kenneth was the strongest cyclone since records have been kept in the Indian Ocean. Its winds wiped out thousands of acres of tree crops. Idea's winds were not as powerful, but she stalled after landfall, and that caused horrific flooding. At least 1,300 people died, and many hundreds more went missing in the floodwaters. These weather events have different implications, but all are ominous. The great majority of people killed by weather-related conditions in this part of the world over the past half century have died from drought. Drought also caused millions of dollars in economic damage. Flooding has affected a third of the population, but killing many fewer people, but causing much, much more economic damage. In short, global warming and the devastating weather events that are already taking place will have a heavy toll on the African continent, and it will get worse. And the poorest people, who have the smallest carbon footprint, will pay the heaviest price. May we this morning think of them, hold them in our hearts, and commit to policy changes that might mitigate future disaster that will otherwise befall them. Thank you very much.
I don't need the step stool. Good morning. My name is Mike Wilson, a member here at First Parish and also co-chairman with Janice Owens of Sustainable Duxbury. Your local tree-hugging environmental organization started 16 years ago to address the issues of global warming, climate change, and sustainability on the local level. The movie An Inconvenient Truth inspired Jim Savicki and Dick Rothschild to start Sustainable Duxbury as an outgrowth of Sustainable South Shore. And here are a few of the accomplishments we have managed to do. We instituted hydration stations at the old high school and middle school, and they were incorporated into the new school building to help reduce the use of single-use plastic bottles, which is part of our parish initiative in November. We banned the use of single-use plastic bags, developed the first community garden on the old Stewart property on Bay Ridge Lane, and are about to tackle the next issue, composting, food waste that constitutes over 30% of the waste stream and is one of the leading factors in temperature rise due to the methane gas it produces. As the planet heats up, an increase in wildfires, extreme heat and drought are upending millions of lives worldwide and putting the planet on the precipice of a global pandemic that could dwarf the COVID-19 crisis as international leaders prepare to gather at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, October 31st through November 12th, the 26th annual UN Climate Conference. Many believe this may be the best last chance to get runaway climate change under control, with almost every country in the world attending. Yes, President Joe Biden will attend and send a message that the United States is back in the game after a 4-year absence under former President Trump, and that global warming and climate changes are real, undeniable, and not a hoax. As I sat down to collect my thoughts for this talk, it seemed that the global climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic are strangely aligned with seemingly alike scientific solutions. In the early days of the pandemic, President Trump commissioned Operation Warp Speed to develop a vaccine to combat this horrible virus that has claimed 700,000 plus lives in the US and 4 million worldwide. Fast forward 8 months, and we had a vaccine. Now, with more than 65% of adults in the US fully vaccinated. What has it accomplished? Minimized health effects, keeps you out of the hospital, and you don't die. My number one concern as the alternative was not very appealing to me. Now shift gears to climate change. It's been well documented by the science community over the past 3 decades that the vaccine for climate change to help mitigate this crisis, in some people's mind, it is as plain as the nose on our face. The burning of fossil fuels, in many people's opinion, is the number one enemy regarding global warming, yet we collectively seem to be in the same church but a different pew, refusing to take that vaccine. On a personal level, one household at a time, we are in the process of installing solar panels on our house and hope to replace my wife Cindy's 11-year-old Prius with an all-electric car. Baby steps for sure, but we all need to start somewhere. What keeps me going? How do I not get discouraged? 29 years ago, we moved to Duxbury, and our thought process was this: if and when our kids would get married and have kids, they'd want to come back to Duxbury Beach. Fast forward to 2021, all 3 are married, and we have 7 grandchildren. When they come, what they say to me, "Come on, Papa, let's go to the beach. Ride some waves, dig some clams, and build some sandcastles." What will Duxbury and Duxbury Beach look like in 25 years to my grandchildren, Sadie, Anna, Penny, Max, Lyle, Warren, and 2-year-old Liam? Will it still be here? Will Snug Harbor and the Bluefish River be underwater at high tide? I see the owner of the Sweetser building in Snug Harbor wants to raise it 4 feet. Coincidence? I think not. I want my children and grandchildren to inherit Planet A, the only one we have, and be able to enjoy what, unfortunately, we collectively have spoiled. We can't wait another minute to respond. What will you do to help? Thank you.
Climbing clock keeps ticking, running out of time. So we're answering the call. Stop this climate crime. Hurricanes are tracking Category 5. Islands and coastlines and staying alive. Let's keep rising higher. How do we survive? Soon to be carbon free. Heat waves keep licking. Temperatures on the rise. Fires burn brightly. Smoke smothers sky. Crops are shivering up. Soon to be carbon free. Soon to be carbon free. Lift up your voice to change the groundswell in me. One person's action becomes a stampede. Chant a new climate creed. Ride the wave of clean energy. Soon to be carbon free. Soon to be carbon free. Soon to be carbon free.
I need the step stool. Nothing is, oh, thank you. Tony, this is my first time standing up here. What a space. This is grand. Nothing is more heartwarming than watching children's joy when they engage with nature. Especially for our daughter, Annie, early adventures in Maine and New Brunswick aroused a passion that informs her personal and professional life to this day. Even as a 6-year-old, she'd sit with me on high ledge at West Quoddy Head State Park, the easternmost point in the contiguous 48 states, waiting patiently for whatever would rise or swim by. The light in her eyes always shone expectantly and would be augmented by intense gratitude when a minke whale rolled by, a bald eagle flew overhead, an osprey or a northern gannet plummeted from high to catch a fish, and seals and porpoises rolled by as well. Now, in her old age, she's 36, she appreciates the little things that you don't see in the ocean. Whenever we go walking in the woods, which isn't as much now because of ticks, I miss her because she could tell me what that sound was over there and what that little bird that I've never been able to identify was. Together, we got to spend time in the Bay of Fundy with North Atlantic right whales. You know what's happening with them. We visited with Atlantic puffins, and they now are in trouble after years of restoration. We couldn't do stuff like that enough. We loved the ever-changing light, the 20-foot tides, the restlessly shifting currents, and the light in her eyes has never dimmed. I believe that look in the eye is inherent. Our connection to nature is inherently strong. At least at a young age, we wish animals and plants and trees to flourish. Now we know that climate change may reduce that spark to an ember. Solving this enormous problem must occur in the face of our tendency to attend to the present and defer important issues. But climate change calls for empathy for a planet and its people long after we are gone. Paying it forward is what might be a great inconvenience to ourselves, and there seems to be no quick answer, no grand solution. Instead, it calls for an awful lot of people performing deeds that are manageable, actions that don't sound exciting. So I'm going to talk about composting. We started composting at our house at least 15 years ago. Vegetable gardening was the motivation. We hadn't thought about other environmental impacts. Vegetable gardening, or this enriching of the soil, and compost's role in that, is a time-honored motivation that traces back to prehistory. And in more recent history in New England, we know that indigenous peoples taught European colonists to enrich soil by burying organic matter like fish and even lobster and seaweed. But composting's emerging importance transcends soil enrichment. It contributes significantly to the reduction of greenhouse gases, as Mike has already noted. The winter of 2014 and 15 drove us out of our home to a condominium development in Duxbury, where we now own a single-family house freestanding and share the property. We don't do much gardening now, but that doesn't mean we can't do composting. The town of Duxbury's transfer station supports composting, in quotes, but only that of grass and shrubbery. Not food waste. At Duxbury Estates, where we live, residents typically combine all food waste with the weekly trash pickup. What could be compostable thus ends up in landfills or lagoons. I'm hopeful that at some point the town will more directly encourage and support town-wide composting. I know that Sustainable Duxbury is moving in that mode, and I'm going to talk about one example of that. In the meantime, business and private citizens who don't need a lot of compost or who reside in condo-like settings can find ways of saving and distributing compost. Through Sustainable Duxbury, we learned about a weekly service that provides curbside pickup of compost. It's called Black Earth. I'm sure there are others, so I don't mean to be a shill for Black Earth. Its mission is to collect food scraps and process it into nutrient-rich compost and return it to the community. This is a quote from their website. There it will enter the growth cycle in our backyard garden or at a local farm and create zero waste. We have used the service for a few months now, leaving a bin for pickup every Saturday morning. We pay $18 a month, $17.99 actually, that price to go down as more businesses and residences adopt the service. In return, we'll receive a voucher to pick up a bag of compost at a regional distributor. We'll give that bag to someone else, most likely, because we don't garden anymore. We know of residents, Donna Savicki for one, and businesses, for example, Island Creek Oysters, using the service independently of the town, and we hope that number will expand. So far, we are the only users at Duxbury Estates, but I do get expressions of interest. And when I put that green bin out there every Saturday morning, I cross my fingers that someone will notice and say, let's do that. Others should learn that composting doesn't have to smell bad. It reduces the content in our trash cans, bins, and thus deals with current inconvenience in the interest of the future. The effects of climate change must and can be mitigated by such small actions by an awful lot of people. Thank you.
Good morning, Cindy Ladd Fiorini, and I am co-chair of the environmental group here at First Parish Church. I'm going to outline the plastic challenge that the group is initiating, but first I'm going to tell you why I am called to environmental worry and to doing what I can to combating the danger of climate change. First, the birds. I love birds. Their songs, their colors, their behavior. I go out of my way to see new birds when I'm away from home, but I enjoy sitting at home and watching them as well. They are my excuse to get out into nature, and they feed my soul. However, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology estimates that North America is home to nearly 3 billion fewer birds compared to 1970. It's 1 out of 4 birds gone. Secondly, my grandchildren, my grandkids, and your grandkids, and the grandkids living in Africa that Jean spoke about, and Mike's and Mark's. What will their future look like and feel like? It makes my mind shut down to even imagine it. And I so desire that the children of the future have a planet to live on that feeds their souls and allows for the comforts of life. This plastic dinosaur, I don't know where to put him, I'll hold him. My husband and I sometimes go to Aruba. On the resort side of the island, the southern facing side, the beaches are beautiful and the water is calm. All the wind and waves in Aruba come from the north. The northern coast is windswept and not suitable for human habitation. But there are dirt roads and we have been down there. But the beaches on the north side are covered in plastic. I picked this up there. I'll have it at coffee hour along with a picture of one of the beaches. So this takes me to my fight with plastic. And Paul Hawken writes in his book, According to Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation, that you drink a Coke in 30 seconds and the bottle lasts for hundreds of years. The world produces 407 million tons of plastic yearly, and it piles up on our beaches and our roadsides and our landfills. It floats in the oceans in mammoth spinning gyres of trash. Marine life is caught in the plastic, or they eat the plastic and they die. Plastic doesn't degrade naturally. It breaks down into smaller and smaller particles, and microscopic plastic accumulates in food chains, including fish and plankton, and broccoli, carrots, pears, and the dust bunnies in our home are microplastics that disrupt our hormones and cause cancer. The UN believes that plastic is the second most ominous threat to the global environment after climate change. So what are we, the Environmental Committee, going to do about it? We're going to sign and send petitions to representatives about extended producer responsibility laws, and we'll learn more about that. We are hosting a really interesting coffee table today that gives alternatives to plastic use, and there's a list of products available for you to take home. We are going to sign up to take a 31-day plastic challenge at coffee hour. We're going to mindfully, for 1 month, not use single-use plastics. This is our handy-dandy calendar that we're going to use as reference with ideas of what you can do. The ideas are not for just one day, they are cumulative. We're going to host weekly Zoom sessions on Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. for about an hour to share our experiences of the week and learn from one another. The link will be sent out to everybody who signs up. And for those of you who are watching remotely, just contact me or Donna Savicki, and you can sign up, and we will send you the links to all of the above things. Lastly, we're going to have some really cool raffle baskets that we're going to pick on November 21st, and you will be eligible to win one if you sign up for the challenge. We will help turn the world around, one less straw, one less plastic container at a time, and we hope that you will join us. Thank you.
You guys can. So thanks to our folks who are working on this initiative, and it's a very exciting coffee hour out there, obviously, and just a few more words to add to the conversation. Several years ago, or for several years, Jackie Smith Miller and I had a wonderful practice of walking along Duxbury Beach every morning. And once we even did an alliance program about our beach walks. We called it Gifts from the Sea. And I've got some photographs. Poor Dustin, I only found these last night, so he's queuing them up. I have some photographs that I took over those walks, and one of them was the photograph of shifting sands. That was always a gift of the sea. And then there, of course, there were the wonderful beach roses, one of my favorite things in the whole wide world, the beach rose photograph. And then always an interesting experience around the plovers. Many times the plovers took over a lot of the real estate as we were walking, but we knew the plovers were important. But I must tell you that most every day that we walked, Jackie would bring a bag with her and we would collect trash along the beach. And most of it was indeed plastic. And I think we have a photograph here of some of our plastic stuff that we collected on the beach. And I also have a photograph of Jackie wrestling with a latex balloon. We always found latex balloons on our beach walks. So tons and tons of all sorts of plastics on the beaches we walked. And then came COVID-19. And Jackie passed away only a few months into the pandemic, but even before she passed, we'd begun to notice that the beaches were much more clean. The amount of plastic on the beach every morning had begun to decline. You see, my spiritual friends, at the height of the pandemic, if you remember last year, we had stopped our environmentally destructive behavior. It was suddenly suspended by the pandemic. And wonderful things happened. You remember that the canals in Venice were clear enough to see the dolphins swimming, who would have thunk? And bird songs were heard again all over the world. And for the first time in 30 years, the Himalayas were visible from more than 100 miles away. And when we stepped outside, we saw stars that we had never seen before. Satellites looking down on Earth last year actually recorded a significant decrease in emissions from cars and trucks and planes and power plants. And pulling cruise ships out of the ocean instantaneously quieted the seas all around the world. Seismologists observed a lot less what's called ambient seismic noise, the noise that comes from vibrations generated by cars and trains and buses and people going around in their daily lives. In the absence of all that seismic noise last year, the upper crust of the earth actually moved a little less. That is how powerful that all was. My friends, this pandemic is also showing us the possibility of worldwide solidarity and cooperation, as all the peoples of the planet have to fight against this virus together. We realize that at a very international level, we are capable of massive shifts across all sectors to meet a crisis head on. My friends, today we say we must apply that same scale and urgency of the response we're making to COVID-19 to the greatest crisis of our time, climate change and global warming. Our current pandemic has shown us that governments must embrace science and embrace it early. As we go forward and work to resolve global warming and climate change, we must continue to listen to the scientists and be guided by their wisdom and their knowledge. We've shown in this pandemic crisis that the peoples of the world can band together and we can listen to the scientists, and we must do the same thing with climate change and global warming. And the pandemic has also laid bare for us the deep inequality in our country, as our most vulnerable Americans, those without health care, those living in neighborhoods with poor air quality, the undocumented immigrants, those in our prisons, all of these beloveds are not getting the support they need in this pandemic. And it's these same communities that have already been hit the hardest, as Jean referred to, by the impacts of climate change and our long history of environmental racism. My friends, when it comes to climate change, this is a critical moment in the history of the world. This is a critical moment in the history of the world. We are the representatives of the cosmos. We're an example of what hydrogen atoms can actually do given 15 billion years of cosmic evolution. That is us, right here, right now. And we are not merely observers here. Our actions and our decisions as human beings will have a ripple effect on the course of life on this planet for thousands of years to come. I'm going to say that again. Our actions and our decisions as human beings will have a ripple effect on the course of life on this planet for thousands of years to come. We are each accountable to one another and to the earth's web of life. Always the prophet, in 1967, 1 year before he was assassinated, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at Riverside Church in New York, and he said this: "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted by the fierce urgency of now. Over the bleached bones and jumbled residues of numerous civilizations are written the pathetic words, 'Too late.' Now let us begin. Now let us rededicate ourselves to the long but beautiful struggle for a new world, a new way of living." And so, my beloveds, that's what we are doing here today, this morning, rededicating ourselves to the long but beautiful struggle for a new world and a new way of living in it. You see, as scary and difficult as this issue of climate change is, climate change is teaching the human family what we know in our seventh principle, the seventh principle of our Unitarian Universalist tradition, that we are all one interdependent web, and we need one another to survive. Friends, Earth and its resources are not some investment opportunity, but a sacred trust. A trust passed on to us by our ancestors, a trust to be enjoyed and passed on to our descendants. But we're not doing such a good job of preserving and maintaining this sacred trust of our planet. The extinction of species is taking place every day. Cindy gave an example with the birds. Researchers estimate that every year over 20,000 species go extinct. 20,000, and the rate is accelerating. Our Earth has been through this kind of crisis before. 250 million years ago, there was a global warming caused by gigantic volcanic eruptions, and that warming caused the worst mass extinction in our planet's history thus far. The 6 degrees Celsius increase in global temperature then was enough to wipe out 95% of the species that were alive on the planet at the time. 95%. Now a second massive warming is taking place. And this time there's also man-made deforestation and industrial pollution. And it is true that perhaps within 100 years, there may be no more human beings on the planet. Sam, how old are you? 15. Sam has a good shot of living to be 100 or more. In Sam's lifetime, he may see all this happen. After the last mass extinction, it took the Earth 100 million years to restore life. 100 million years. If our civilization disappears, it'll take a similar amount of time for another civilization to reappear. My friends, our species, Homo sapiens, is a very young species on the planet. We arrived very late to the party, but we kind of behave as if we're the boss. We think we are exceptional. We think we have a right over everything else and every other species on Earth, and it's with this mindset that we've done a whole lot of damage to the planet. But the fact is, we already have technological solutions to climate crisis. But we're so possessed by fear and anger and division that we're unable to make good use of them. We are not making the challenges a priority. We're not investing our time and our resources. We're not collaborating around the world. Maybe some of you are old enough to remember the movie The Graduate. Dustin Hoffman played this kid, Benjamin Braddock, a young man of about 21 years old who had just graduated from college. And his parents and their friends were having this party, these folks, these successful members of the American upper middle class. They were anxious to see young Ben do well in his life. And so they peppered him with encouragement and all kinds of career suggestions. And there's this one great scene where Benjamin's middle-aged neighbor, Mr. McGuire, says to Ben, "I just want to say one word to you, just one word." And Benjamin says, "Yes, sir." And McGuire says, "Are you listening?" And Benjamin said, "Yes, I am." And Mr. McGuire said this, "Plastics." My spiritual friends, this morning your minister has one word to say to you: plastics. Let's all sign up for the plastic challenge. Our green team here has all sorts of suggestions and ideas for us. Make the commitment. It's a small step, but as the ancient saying goes, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the smallest step. If you won't take this 30-day challenge for yourself, as Cindy said, take it for some young person in your life. I have 11 grandkids. I take it for them. Take it for Sam. Sam's going to be around for decades. What kind of world do we want to leave for him? It does feel like we have 1,000 miles to go on this climate change journey, doesn't it? But the invitation this morning is to take this step right here, right now, today. Here's your word for the morning: plastics. See you at coffee hour. I'll be signing up. If you want to sing along, Blue Boat Home.
Below me, I feel no motion. Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my tribe and heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor no port have I known. Wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my boat. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I fly the starry seas, leaning over the edge and wonder, casting questions into the deep. Drifting here with my ship's companion, all we kinder pilgrim soul, making our way by the lights of the heaven in our beautiful I've been sailing all my life now, never harbored no port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my boat. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat.
Very cool to have Peter back with us. Yay, Peter, good to see you again. Some of you may not have ever met Peter. He was mostly on Zoom last year, so great to have Peter with us today. So, my friends, until we meet again, may you be blessed. Now go be a blessing to the world, and begin that by signing the challenge, and let's go eat cake.